Hello, Lynchburg City students. I'm Tristan Brown. I'm back again today with a preparation question for the math portion of the SAT, and specifically the math with no calculator section of the math SAT. We started on that a video or two ago, and I certainly want to continue that. Like I said, one of the something we deal with in this section that you typically don't deal with, and I don't think I've seen it all in the calculator section of the SAT, is this beautiful imaginary number I that no one really likes. I certainly wanted to get at least one problem with that out. So in the event that you ran into that in the SAT, which more than likely you will, you could be prepared to deal with that. It probably sounds odd because they don't teach you in high school, but there actually is a purpose for I. It's very useful. I actually took a whole course based on complex numbers in I last semester, so I actually do. It is very useful now. I didn't like it when I was in high school either, so if you're in that boat, don't feel bad. But it does have some decent applications in real life. That being said, regardless of the real applications, you have to know how to deal with it algebraically and conceptually for the SAT. So let's deal with that. This is a yellow passport to mathematics. Like I said, most of them come from this section in no calculator. This is supposed to be of medium difficulty, and I'm pretty sure it's because of this I. And it just says, and our question is, which of the following is equal to 14 minus 2I times 7 plus 12I, and it gives us answer 74, 122, 74 plus 154I, and 122 plus 154I. So we have a decent assortment of answers there. This question, if there was an X instead of an I, it would probably be considered an easy question because it's just multiplication and combining like terms. But because we have the I there, I do believe that's why it has this medium difficulty. That being said, let's go through. Remember, this is a video. If at any point you want to pause the video, try to solve this before I start going right now, you're welcome to do that. If at any point you get confused, remember you can rewind the video, go back to wherever you got lost at, and go through as many times as you need to gain understanding over it. Be patient with it. Be patient with yourself. It takes time to learn a lot of this, so don't worry if it takes you more than one time. That being said, I'm going to start going through this. So we have 14 minus 2I, and that's being multiplied by 7 plus 12I. Now, I got to be honest, when I looked at this problem, I was not exactly pleased to see it because this is the no calculator section. We're going to be multiplying some fairly large numbers together that aren't in our multiplication tables. We have 14 times 7, and then eventually we have 14 times 12. So it's not too awful, but just keep that in mind that you could not use your calculator when you do this on the SAT. But we're just going to use FOIL. I hope you've been taught FOIL, but we're just multiply every term in one by every term in the other in the combined like terms. So we have 14 times 7. 14 times 7 is 98. And if you had to multiply that out, don't feel bad. I've done the problem a couple times. I just knew that's what it was. So that's all right. If you didn't, then we multiply 14 by 12I, which is positive. It's 144, 156, 168, 168I. And then, so we multiply 14 by both of these terms. Now we're going to multiply -2 by both of these terms. -2I times 7 is -14I, and -2 times positive 12I is -24I squared. Now, one thing before I continue on, I hope you've been taught this, but you might not have. There is a pattern with raising i's to powers. It's very important to know and very convenient and useful. So we know that I by itself is the square root of -1. And we also know that anything raised to the 0 power equals 1. And I is no exception from that. I raised to the 0 power is still 1. Now I squared, which I hope this one comes intuitively. But if you were, this is I is the square root of -1. If you were to square that, it just gets rid of the square root, so you're left with -1. And this one, if you do the algebra, you can figure it out, but it might be a little bit more confusing. But I raised to the third power equals -I. And that's because it's this term times this term. So that's how you get this. And what's beautiful about this is that we can just keep going through this set of 4 over and over and over again through all integer numbers. If we had this is equivalent also to I equals 4, it's next to I. Just as this is equal to I over 5 and I over 6 and I over 7. And you could just continue that on forever. So that's something very nice about I that you might not have known before, but we especially need for this I squared. We need to know that so we can solve this problem. So that being said, I squared was -1. So if we replace that, and I'm just going to bring everything down, we have 98. We go ahead and combine these two. 168i minus 14i is positive 154i. And this is -24 now. It's -24 times -1, which is positive 24. So then we combined our first of the like terms, so then we combine our last two terms, and we get 122 plus 154i. Good. D says that's right. So let's go down to the next slide to make sure I did all that properly. It is, D is correct. 122 plus 154i was the correct answer. So we did all that work right, which is good. And then y, like I said, I is the square root of -1, and I squared is -1, which were the two primary things you had to know. And then you just multiplied the binomials together like you typically would. And my tip, this one's very important. Anytime you're multiplying two complex numbers together, you are always going to get a complex number. There's a very few cases where terms will cancel out, so you only have the a term, typically complex or written in the form of a plus bi is how it's expressed generally. So there are a couple cases where our I terms will cancel out and we'll be left with a. So it would be a something plus 0i, which obviously you don't have to write. And there are cases where you have the other hand, your whole numbers will cancel out, and then you'll be left with just the bi part. But it's always going to be done in the exact way we did it today. I squared is always -1. A negative times a negative is a positive. We had -24 times -1 because of the I squared, which is positive 24. So always be cautious, very cautious about your signs. Just keep everything in check when you're dealing with that. Again, I know I is kind of odd, but it's not hard to deal with if you just keep everything focused and together. Again, I would suggest memorizing those for the I raised to the 4 different powers, and then just the pattern with that, because that's incredibly useful moving forward. So if you have things raised to, the 90 or 100th power, you can just really quickly figure out what that would be and simplify, and it's not hard at all. So thank you guys for watching. I hope that was helpful. Remember, you have access to this video, I guess, probably forever. So watch it again as many times as you need to. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you with the next video.